Hi, I am author Abby Tyler, and I am reading Chapter 4 of my book of women's fiction called Runaway, Cove. It's about a runaway bride who is taken in by the small coastal town where she lands. If you are new to this book, you can go back to my playlists in my channel and find the Runaway Cove playlist and start at Chapter 1. This book is released and is available on all retailers. Let's get started. Chapter 4 of Runaway Cove. Zeke sat back in his chair, one leg stretched out. He glanced around the homespun coffee shop with its checkered curtains and weathered wood floor. The others prattled on about the play they'd seen, mostly poking fun at the marginal talent of the cast, but he tuned them out. He saw no reason to badmouth the locals. He thought their rendition of The King and I had flair. Besides, he was the one who had suggested this tiny town for a weekend trip. His father had raved about Runaway Cove when he was a kid, and it had a good reputation for being peaceful and laid back. The beach was good, and the actual cove made a lot of travel blogs for its picturesque shore and craggy cliffs. He watched his friends, feeling detached. Two of the men and one of the women were colleagues at the architectural firm where he worked. One guy, Jared, had been his college roommate. Two of the others were girlfriends of the men. The last woman, Regina, a friend of one of the girlfriends, was clearly angling to be his. She watched him in her peripheral vision. He could see it. But from the conversations with Regina this weekend, she wasn't his type. This strudel, though, might be a new obsession. He wanted to buy more. Maybe he'd stop in on his way out of town tomorrow and pick up a box of them to take home. He had to fight the temptation to lick the empty plate. The woman behind the counter had disappeared, probably to shut down. Businesses sure closed up early in Runaway Cove. They realized this last night when they got in late, and the only place to eat was the bar. The food had been amazing, though. The lobster rolls were as good as any he'd had in Boston. He could see why the town had left an impression on his father. Maybe he'd make Dad come back with him later this year. If he could catch him. Dad's financial consulting took him all over the world. Sometimes it was a feat to be in the same city at Christmas. Since his mom died 2 years ago, Dad didn't much enjoy holidays. Zeke was a one and only, and without a big family to organize get-togethers, they simply didn't. Fortunately, he'd cultivated a good group of friends dominated by himself, Franklin, and Jared, all grads from Roger Williams, one of the best architectural schools in the country. The three of them had been chosen as interns at Foster and Thomas, which had sealed their friendship. Zeke and Franklin accepted offers at F&T. But Jared had landed a spot in a huge, prestigious firm, something he got a little too smug about. Their friendship remained, though, and the circle grew with more young co-workers and their friends, a portion of whom were represented at this mishmash of tables pushed together. Thankfully, Regina was not at F&T. Zeke never dated a co-worker and took care to never lead one on. His father had called that peeing in your chili, an expression Zeke could picture but never quite understood. His chair jolted beneath him with a screech. Franklin had kicked it. "Hey, dreamer, wake up. We're talking about what to do after this." Everyone was looking at him. "Back to the bar?" he suggested. "Nah," Franklin said. "I mean later, sure, but there's an Italian place in town. We're thinking of calling to see if we can get a reservation." Cool, sure." Jared was chosen to call, and everyone fell silent, waiting for the verdict. And that's when it happened. The door to the coffee shop opened with a jingle. Zeke only half faced the entrance, but when he saw her, his head whipped around. A woman walked in, early 20s, wearing a yellow shirt tied at the waist and neon orange shorts that might have been a size too snug. Her long legs moved fluidly, ending in pink flip-flops. She looked like rainbow sherbet, but it totally worked for her. Her pale hair was long, curled, and highlighted with gold. Her face was washed clean of any makeup, although she might have had eyelash extensions because they were black and fringed. She tugged self-consciously on the hem of the shirt, which exposed a slim inch of belly. She seemed nervous and stopped halfway into the room, glancing at the young teen girl who was leading her. "I'll go find Vicky," the girl said, running behind the counter and through a set of thick curtains. The woman stood there, wringing her hands. She glanced around the shop and caught him staring at her. He thought this might be their moment. She would look at him, he would look at her, an instant connection would be formed. He'd get her name, invite her to join their group. His chest hammered painfully. He didn't feel this way often, especially not from simply looking at someone. But her gaze passed right over him, taking in the space instead. The boy with them dropped into a chair and pulled out his phone. His mother put her hand on his shoulder. And then the teen girl returned with the woman from the counter. Beside him, Jared was talking, probably announcing whether or not they had gotten reservations, but Zeke couldn't pay attention to that. All his attention was on her. The teen girl gestured to the young woman. "Vicky, this is the person we told you about. She's from Chicago and is thinking about staying in Runaway Cove for a bit. She used to work at a coffee shop in Notre Dame. Her name is Cricket." The young girl was very self-assured and well-spoken. Zeke hung on her every word. Chicago, Runaway Cove, Notre Dame. Cricket. Vicky looked her over. "How long are you planning on being here?" Zeke leaned forward in his chair, dying to hear her voice. It was low and melodic, Midwestern, for sure. I'm not sure. I don't have anywhere else to be." Vicky's eyes narrowed. "Where are you going to stay? The inns are all full for the season, and I don't think you could afford them anyway. I'm not working here. I pay fair, but this is a high-priced area." The mother of the teen, a woman in her late 40s, looked up at that. "Vicky, I might have that covered, at least for a few weeks." Vicky seemed unconvinced. "I need the help, that's for sure, and I trust you, Miranda." She peered at Cricket. "What goes in an Americano?" Cricket lifted her chin. "Espresso diluted with hot water." "What's the ratio of a cappuccino?" 1/3 espresso, 1/3 steamed milk, and 1/3 foam. Vicky motioned the younger woman to come behind the counter. "Make me a latte." Cricket glanced at the mother, then moved behind the bar. She took a moment to orient herself to the machines and set to work. "Cinnamon?" she asked Vicky. The older woman grimaced. Who puts cinnamon on a latte? Cricket's mouth flirted with her first smile, and Zeke relaxed a notch. He hadn't liked Vicky's hard attitude with Cricket, but he could see now that she could handle it. This sealed it. He had to meet her. Everyone else started standing up, their chairs scraping on the floor. Franklin elbowed him. "We could only get a table early. We're heading straight there." No way was Zeke leaving. "I'll catch up," he said. "What's gotten into you?" He followed Zeke's gaze to the counter. "Oh, I see." He laughed. "I'll text you when you're about to forfeit your spot. Just order me some penne and say I'm taking a call outside." Zeke's gaze never left Cricket, who rotated a pitcher under a silver machine. His friends left. Regina hesitated a moment by his chair, but then moved on. Vicky glanced up at the group leaving, but nobody seemed to notice him sitting silently at the corner table, rapt as he watched Cricket work, tilting the pitcher over a mug. She passed Vicky the drink. The older woman looked at the top. "We never did the design thing before. It gets better tips, and people photograph it and tag the shop. Maybe get more people in?" Zeke felt his chest swell with pride at Cricket, even though he had zero involvement. Something was going on here, and she was proving herself. Vicky sipped the drink. "All right, you seem to know your way around. Come in tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp. I get here at 5 to make the strudel, and you can start the coffee. We open at 7. The teen girl squealed and clapped her hands. "We did it!" Zeke wondered what she meant, but now that their business was done, he had his. He wanted to talk to her. He quickly strode to the counter. "Can I get another strudel and a latte, or is it too close to closing?" Vicky glanced at the clock over the door. I can give it to you to go. That's fine. You want me to make it? Cricket asked Vicky. She wouldn't look directly at him. Sure, why not? Vicky opened the pastry case. He followed Cricket's every movement. The shot of espresso, the addition of steamed milk. He wasn't sure she'd do a design in a to-go cup, but she seemed to understand what he wanted. Before she popped the lid on top, she showed him the latte. It had a foam milk heart. He was a goner. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 4. I will be continuing to put the chapters all the way to the end of the book. If you're anxious to find out what's going to happen between Zeke and Cricket, or what will happen now that Zeke is hanging around and Vicky doesn't want her granddaughter to see him, you might want to pick it up at a retailer to read it more quickly. Thanks for being here.